My name is Stephanie South, and this is my interpersonal communication project with class HSCO number 508. Today I want to talk to you about what communication, interpersonal communication is. We're going to talk about the features of communication, my overarching goal, and talking about how that can enhance the conversation. I'll give you a little bit of background information about myself and how that will affect my behavioral blend. We'll talk about barriers to communication and how to break those barriers. And we'll also talk about noise pollution, which is internal and external, action plan. Communication and interpersonal communication is best viewed by Per Stewart as a continuous, complex, collaborative process of verbal and nonverbal meaning making. Interpersonal communication, therefore, can be viewed as a type of contact between people that expands the meanings, identity, and relationship. It is the process of inhaling and exhaling. Also, I read an article titled Psychological Perspectives on Interpersonal Communication, and it had an interesting statement, and it said interpersonal communication is intentional communication. The part about inhaling and exhaling is really simple, and it's a good metaphor, if you will, in trying to stay abreast of how you are communicating with people. The aspect of inhaling is just the active part of listening. And then the exhaling is just the component that can be found in just opening up to other people. And that's just, and being deliberate in listening to others. I found that the features of communication in the Stewart text were very essential in learning how to be an effective communicator, because you're going to talk about meaning. The text says that we live in a world, our world is full of meanings, and meanings are identified through communication. Our identities are formed through communication. And that also stems from our choice. Choices are behaviors that are guided by guidelines of our values of what's right and wrong. Choices are made and experienced within personal experiences. So when we come to a conversation, we bring in lots of experiences, and bad or good, that will affect how the conversation turns out. And we need to be aware of that. Culture is also embedded in our interpersonal communication, because that's just who we are. And it also determines our choices and the interactions that we have with others. Identities, again, it talks about that are developed through communication. They're multidimensional, and they're changing. Our identities change. And it can change with who we talk with within a matter of a few minutes. And that's a very interesting part. Conversation is just the essential thing that we do in communication. The Stewart text says that conversations are the absolute foundation or basis for everything that humans do as social beings. And part of that, the part of the features of communication is the nexting. That is basically the most important communication skill, and it just extends the conversation. It adds value to the conversation, if you will. My overarching goal is pretty simple. I basically took it from Ephesians chapter 4, verse 29, and it says, "Let no corrupt talk come out of your mouths, but only such as is good for building up as fits the occasion, that it may give grace to those who hear." So basically my foundations for this is that I want to listen carefully to what I say and how I say it, because this teaches me more about myself. Additionally, I want to develop better self-awareness of my own communication needs. I don't think there is ever a perfect communicator. I think that we are all learning and growing as we go throughout our journeys. I really want to hear others and not just listen. I think that is an invaluable tool, because there's a lot of talking, but there's not a lot of listening, and that affects our relationships, work, personal. And it also affects our identities, really, if you think about it. I also want others to hear and feel God's grace from me. So when I'm talking with somebody and I'm having a communication, I want to keep in mind that that's the most important thing I ever want someone to know and to really hear. and especially my identity, is that I want them to feel God's grace from me, and I want to be able to show that. How do I enlarge the conversation? That was that's very challenging, because there are certain attributes that are part of this, and that would be like the value. You're going to basically just value the person who they are, where they are, and why they're even talking to you. You're going to show empathy in regards to what they're saying. Truly put yourself in their shoes. Truly open your mind, if you will, to how important what they're saying and how important it is to them. And feel free to share about yourself. Feel free to share about what they're talking about. Use the paraphrasing plus where you extend it. You got a conversation can grow between two people, or it can end rapidly and the meanings be misconstrued all around. And the next thing would be changes. I think a lot of people can add value to our lives if we would just listen. I think a lot of times we assume that we know what the other person's going to say, or we assume that we know best, so we shut them off before they're even finished. So enlarging the conversation is really less of me and more of the person that's doing the talking. Stewart also says that multidimensional and the enlarging the conversation is multidimensional. It takes everybody. There's not a solitary player in conversation or in communication. It's a change in response to the people and the situations we connect with. So our mode of communication and how we react to others changes with the relationship that we have, and in the text of how we're talking. If you're at work versus a friendship versus a pastor, things like that. A little bit about my background, because when you look at communication and how we speak to others, these are things that are me. These are things that will affect my relationship, my communication patterns with everybody. And my identities will include that I'm a female, I'm a mother, I'm a wife, I've been educated per my standards, I'm independent, hyper, a little strong-willed, and although looks can be deceiving, I have a little different walk than most people. So all of these are what I'm going to bring to the table. And so the person that I want, that's talking to me, that's hearing me, these are things that I value about myself and that I'm going to make. And these are how I'm going to, and this is what I'm identifying with coming to you. Background influences is just the positive things that I think that are good, that I'm bringing with me from the past. Is just that the love for Jesus, my family. I feel that I'm determined and soft-hearted, and sometimes I can be a little witty. But then also the negative part, I also added determined, because sometimes I think in communication you can overshadow somebody, and that's not what, interpersonal communication is about in regards to growing. I can judge and be judged. Sometimes I can be a little bit too direct, and I have to really watch how I convey information, because I am totally ambiguous and very direct. I can talk very fast. And again, another part that I put as a strength but a negative is also education, because sometimes I think that people who are educated may feel a little bit superior in their conversations with others who they think are not educated. So I think that as people, we should appreciate the experiences and the person that you're speaking with, not based on worldly standards of education or society or class, but as Jesus would appreciate them, just as a person, as a sinner waiting to claim their glory. A behavioral blend from the Carbonell profile was that it's the 4 temperaments or personality types, and they are interwoven to form your specific unique personality. Because it says identities in your personality are fluid and they're changing, and this allows for for growth, and my and the types of different types of personality can be a driver, which is an active and task-oriented person; inspiring, which is also active but more people-oriented. You have steady, which is passive, and people-oriented, and then cautious, which is passive and task-oriented. My behavioral blend was the IDSC, which is inspiring, directive, sharing, and cautious. So basically, I would assume that this makes me an active, people-oriented person. I would say I'm more people-oriented versus task-oriented. I also wanted to mention the Queendom quiz because, you know, when I took the quiz early on in the class, and I scored a 78, and this was on insightfulness, which the authors stated that I can show empathy and I am insightful in my conversations, but that I can be distracted from meanings of the conversations. And then in reading some of the discussion board quizzes or responses, some people scored really high. So this to me showed that this is an area that I need to work on. I think, you know, like we've said in the past, communication is an ongoing process. You never stop learning, you never stop improving. So this is an area, a piece of the puzzle that I need to put together for myself. The barriers in communication for myself is biased listening, distort messages to hear what I want to hear, or getting emotionally involved in a topic where I just stop listening and I'm just all mouth. Because I can do that. I think that also there's physical barriers where you're tired and you're stressed and work demands. I think that's a huge part of sometimes you just want to shut down. You just don't want to listen. And then there's external barriers, and that can be deception. And it also could be just looking for ways to decode what someone's saying, trying to find a mistruth in what they're saying. I think that these barriers in communication are very significant because it hinders the person that's receiving the information from really learning about the other speaker and not valuing the other person enough. So how am I going to break these barriers? We're going to talk about diagnostic listening and just one point in this. And that is just say what you mean. And then we're going to talk about reflecting skills, and that's just really about going back and paraphrasing what somebody says and making sure that you understand. Show them that you're listening, and that's how you do it with verbal and nonverbal means of communication. And then I really like the paraphrasing plus, and that is basically just understanding what they say but taking it further. Showing interest and then making a connection and taking the conversation to where there's growth and it's not just black and white. Noise pollution, and that is unwanted or useless sounds or thoughts that reduce the effectiveness of communication. These can be internal or external, and a lot of the internal can be like personal thoughts. You're tired, you have a sick child, maybe you're worrying, uninterested in the conversation, and then trying to determine, you know, if they're lying or their motives for what they're saying. These are things that reduce your ability to hear and to listen to people. External could also be chatter in the room, the loudness of the speaker's voice, because someone who comes at you and they talk really loud like that, you're just distracted and you step back. You tune them down, tune them out. Unfamiliar noises, nature's noises, air conditioning, or just a constant humming. These all can be distractions for whenever you're trying to speak with someone, so that way you have to be aware of these things that can be distracting to you. And I think awareness is the most essential thing. Just to be aware of this so that you know, okay, I've got to tune this out because I've got to get, I really want to hear what this person's saying. My action plan. Well, of course, first and foremost, we're just going to pray for wisdom and discernment. You know, I really want to hear what God wants me to say. I really want to do what God wants me to do in communicating with others, and to be willing to listen and make listening an intention and a responsibility. It's not, you know, I don't listen to somebody. I shouldn't think I'm listening to somebody as a favor, because that's not being Christ-like. It's my responsibility to hear what someone's saying. And it's their responsibility to hear what I'm saying. Listening is not a task, it's an opportunity, and it's an opportunity to grow. And I need to maybe change my thought process when I'm speaking with others. to be less open, maybe less direct. And maybe it's not really to be less direct or less open. It's to be aware of tactfulness and compassion and tone of voice and nonverbal skills. Sometimes you just have to meet the person where they're at, and you have to be aware if you're abrupt. So I think that's really important that I really have to work on. And I also have to be willing to be wrong or different and accept that in the other person. There's always room to grow, and there's never, unless we're talking about the Bible, there's never really black and white. You can add some gray to it. So there you go. That's my interpersonal communication project.